Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual free thinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are in your spiritual journey, you are welcome. I'm Laura Wink, your worship associate for this morning, and the service today will be led by our minister, Eileen Casey Campbell. Today is an intergenerational service, so we are not sending the children. If this is your first visit, welcome. There's plenty to do today. Don't worry about it, Elliot. It'll be lots of fun. We invite you to sign the visitor's book in the entryway. And whether it's your first visit or your 1,000th, we are glad that you came. This service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel. We plan on continuing with hybrid worship services throughout the church year, so you can join us each week here in person, on Zoom, or later on YouTube. We have a few announcements to share. Next week is going to be our second Sunday potluck after the service. We invite everyone to bring a dish to share, but even if you forget, you're welcome. We always have enough for everyone. On Earth Day, Monday, April 22nd, join our UUCC member and lifestyle and medicine expert and author, Dr. Carrie Graff, woo-woo, Carrie in the back, to learn how what we put on our forks affects our personal health and the health of our planet on which all life depends. This 90-minute presentation includes a delicious plant-based grain bowl. Dr. Graff's book, The 4-Leaf Guide to Vibrant Health, will be available for purchase. A grain bowl dinner will be served starting at 6 p.m. Please share and invite your friends and neighbors. This is a free event with an optional donation of $20. Please register on our website. If you don't have plans yet for the eclipse, First U is offering a eclipse day in the gardens. If you can, please RSVP so that they have enough glasses. And they're going to have a reflective service after the eclipse. And we have a canvas moment with Peter Gamba.
Whichever one you like.
Hi. Good morning, I'm Peter Gamba. They asked me to talk about my history with Unitarian Universalism. Okay, Mary Beth and I moved to Binghamton area, about 46, 47 years ago, and we were looking for a church. We saw an article in the local paper about a person named Harry Thaw who was giving a talk on social justice at a Unitarian church. What was that? I don't know. We went to the Friday night talk and we decided UU was a place to go. We became involved in many groups that address social justice and spirituality. We became members of the local Interfaith Council. We attended a number of UUA annual meetings. If anybody has had an opportunity to go to UUA annual meetings, they're really enjoyable. They're really very, very. Also, when I was traveling with my job, when I stayed over on a weekend, I looked for a Unitarian church to go on Sunday, and I was traveling a lot back then, and I traveled all over the country, doing different things, so I visited a lot of Unitarian churches, different places, from here to California. They had been all over the country, and each had a UU mission and an individual mission, which I thought was nice. 21 years ago this week, we moved to the Branchport area here and searched and found the UU congregation here, which was closest to us. Being here continues to reinforce our lifetime learning in the areas of spirituality, social justice, community interaction, and friends. Peace, hope, and love, Peter and Mary Beth. I have a little poem I put together. I was at a poetry meeting the other day, and I parked the car, walked into the church, said hello to friends, listened to the music and sang, sat quiet for a few minutes, learned from the message, sang again, enjoyed friends, drove home and smiled.
Thank you, Peter. As we prepare to be fully together, I remind all of us to silence our phones and other devices. We now enter a space of worship. Now is the time in our service for chalice lighting, and Poppy's gonna help us out today. She's got a companion. It might be easier to use this. I invite you to join me in our chalice lighting words as the flame is lit. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. Thank you. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
About 7, I asked my grandfather what he thought God looked like. And he told me he didn't think there was a wrong way to imagine God, but that he thought of God in the shape of a Streptococcus bacterium. And yeah, that is a weird thing to say, right? I thought so too. To make it less weird, I should tell you he was a microbiologist who studied viruses and bacteria. He worked on the development of a lot of the antibiotics that we still use today. Does that make it a lot less weird? I don't know. But what he meant, because I did have to ask him to explain it to me further, was that he was convinced of the sacredness of creation, of the existence of enormous mystery, whenever he looked at incredibly intricate, unfathomably small creatures through his microscope every day. Creatures that people weren't even aware of the existence of, never mind the shape of, when he was born, just a couple decades earlier. Miracles that had happened in his own lifetime that we couldn't have imagined the shape or the purpose of. What he meant, and I don't think this bit is weird at all, is that to him, God looks like the wonder that strikes our hearts when we consider the scale of the cosmos. And I think that's why we come to church, isn't it? To be wonder-struck sometimes. To sit in that place of awe at the mystery greater than we could possibly imagine. At a world that includes streptococci and also spiral galaxies, eclipses, and tide pools, and walnuts, and dark matter, and also, inexplicably, you. And so I invite you to join me with your hearts wonder-struck this morning to rise in body or in spirit and sing together our opening hymn. This morning, it's number 14 in your gray hymnal, The Sun at High Noon.
At
it's time for a story. So if you're a small person or even a not so small person and you want to come up a little closer to hear the story and sit on the floor in front, that is okay. You can come up now or you can come up anytime during the story. This morning's story is called Who Loves the Dark by Reverend Sherry Philibom. And I need a little help to tell it. Is there a story helper willing today? I thought so. Oren, you're our first helper. Okay, this is a child. Hard to believe, right? There was once a child who got lost in the woods. And as night began to descend, the child became more and more frightened. Yeah. I'm sure any of us would have been frightened too in that situation, but what made this child, this particular child, even more frightened was that he had always been afraid of the dark. He was more afraid of the dark than any of his friends or his siblings. He didn't know why he was more afraid than his friends or his siblings. He only knew that when the sun went down, he wanted to be inside his brightly lit house and nowhere else. When the sun was all the way down and the only light was just a tiny glimmer from the moon, the child got so frightened that all he could do was sit down and cry, which he did, just like this. Yes. Soon he heard a voice. I need another helper. Is there another helper available? We can imagine the voice as if we have to. He heard a voice say, "What's all that racket?" It was a rather grumpy voice. And he looked down and saw a tiny mole squinting up at him. "I'm lost in the woods," the child said, "and it's dark and I'm afraid." "Well," the grumpy mole said, "perhaps you could take your noisy crying farther down the path, because I don't like having to come out of my warm, comfortable, dark hole to tell people to be quiet." And then the child heard another voice. Is there another helper? Oh, yes. Here she is. She heard a voice say, "Go on back to your hole, Mr. Mole. I'll take care of this." And Mr. Mole went, "Oh, you're the mole." Oh, I'm the mole. Yeah, good job, Mole. Well played. The child looked up in the direction of the newer voice, but he saw nothing. In the darkness, all he could see were two glowing eyes looking down at him. Yes. And before he could scream, which was his first impulse, there was a flutter of wings, and the creature flew down and landed next to him. And he could see that it was an owl, who said, "Please excuse Mr. Mole. He hates to come out of his nice dark hole for anything, to be honest." And at this, the child burst out crying harder than before, because as frightened as he was of the dark, having non-human animals speak to him was beyond his experience, and a little frightening in itself. "There's no need for crying," said the owl. "If you just tell me where you live, I can guide you home." And with that, the child did indeed stop crying, partly out of relief that someone might be able to lead him home, and partly out of curiosity as to how anyone could locate his home in the dark. But deciding he had little to lose, the child choked back his tears and replied he would be very grateful, and gave the owl his address. And I'm sure everyone here has your home address memorized in case an owl has to ever guide you home, right? Yes, of course we do. So they got up, and this strange pair headed through the dark forest in what the child hoped was truly the direction of home. So we head through the dark forest, follow the owl. And just when his fear left him a bit, the child looked around, and through the moonlight, he began to notice his surroundings a little. At one point, he noticed a kind of flower he had never seen before, and he slowed his pace just so he could gaze at it. "That," said the owl as they paused, "is an evening primrose. Did you know there are some flowers that only bloom in the dark? There are moonflowers and night gladiolas, too, flowers you would never see if you never went out at night." And after a while, the owl said, as if musing to herself, Of course, there are animals, too, who love the dark and the nighttime. Me, for example, I love the dark. In the daytime, the light hurts my eyes, and that's when I go into my tree and sleep. To this, the boy said, well, I like the daytime. I need to be able to see, to kick a ball. I like the hot sun at the beach. When the dark isn't scary, it's just boring. Boring, you say, replied the owl. She clearly had some opinions to express on the point. But just then, there was a fluttering and a squeaking around their heads. And I think we're already seeing this happen. Thank you, Elliot. You have anticipated the story so well. It took the child a few seconds to figure out what it was, and he screamed, "A bat!" And he started flailing his arms to knock the creature away. And the shape of the bat backed away, slowed down, and hovered just out of reach, saying, "Excuse me, I was just saying hello." "Well, hello to you, Mr. Bat," said the owl. "This child was out here lost in the forest, and I'm helping him find his way home. You're not hurt, are you?" "Well," said the bat, "I think I'll live." "But you're a bat," said the child, "a creature of darkness. Weren't you trying to drink our blood?" "Ew, no," said the bat. "I've been eating yummy insects who would have been drinking your blood if I weren't around. Anyway, I couldn't help overhearing what you said about darkness being boring. And if you want to come a little bit out of your way, I can show you something really exciting." "Well, my parents told me never to go any place with strangers," said the child. "Looks like you're already doing that," said the bat. "And besides, Owl will vouch for me. We've known each other for years and years." So Owl agreed that Bat was an upstanding citizen to be trusted, and so the group went down the path and traveled through the deepest forest for what seemed like just a few minutes, and then they came out onto a dark beach. Right here. They came out onto a dark beach. "Here we are," said the bat. "Here we are." And the child, "Oh no, we're going to be safer than that, Bat." Yeah. The child gazed out at the beach, lit very gently by the moonlight, and thought, "Well, this is beautiful, even in the dark, but I wouldn't call it exciting." And just then, there was a little movement in the sand, like a bubble of sand rising up, and then another bubble, and then another bubble. And what do you think it was?
A snake.
Well, you're very close. It looked almost as if the beach in the area they were looking at was boiling. And then out of one of those bubbles popped a rounded shape. "It looks like we got here at just the right time," said the bat. And as they watched more and more shadowy shapes, the boy figured it out. Came up out of the sand, and the child realized what he was seeing. Lots of baby turtles, hundreds of them climbing out of the sand. It was exciting. Once each turtle shape pulled itself out of the sand, it started crawling as fast as its legs could carry it toward the water. "When the baby sea turtles hatch," said the owl in a sort of teacherly voice, "they need to find their way to the water, and they almost always do this at nighttime, because to find the water, they need darkness everywhere else to follow the moon and the starlight reflecting off the water. Daytime sunlight is too bright and scattered everywhere, and the dark offers them safety from predators who would use their daytime vision to eat them also." "Oh," said the child. And as they turned to leave and head back toward the child's home, Owl spoke again as if thinking to herself, "You know who else loves the darkness besides the nighttime plants and animals? The moon and stars love the darkness. That's when they can really show off. Of course, they're there in the daytime as well, hidden behind a wall of light. But when that wall goes down with the sun, the stars and the moon reveal their beauty." And the child felt less and less hurried to get back to the bright light of his home as they continued walking. And after what seemed like a very short time, the child and the owl left the forest and walked down a street that the child recognized as his own. He was happy and relieved, but also a little sad to say goodbye to Owl and Bat, to whom he gave a very gentle hug and thank you. He went into his home being extremely tired and got ready for bed right away. Before he went to bed, just as a matter of habit, he bent down to turn on the nightlight that he always kept glowing through the night to keep the dark at bay. But before his fingers touched the switch of the nightlight, he smiled to himself and pulled his hand away. He got into bed, pulled up the covers, and let the comforting arms of darkness soothe him to sleep. And this is the end of our story. Thank you so much for your help.
Now is the time in our service to join together in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts of both time and money support our church in its work. Each week, we like to spotlight a group or committee and thank them for their gift of time. This week, the group is the board. This is a great way to connect. Yep, self-congratulations here. I'm the worship associate, so I get to choose. So, yes, I am a member of the board, and I really enjoy it. This is a great way to connect more deeply with members of our church and get a sense of what's happening all across our congregation. People interested in finding out more about joining the board for our next year can talk to Thomas Lyon. He is our nomination committee, and he's in the back. 1/4 of our plate collection from the muddy season goes to Sustainable Finger Lakes, a community-based organization whose mission is to promote the long-term well-being of our region by integrating social equity, economic vitality, ecological stewardship, and shared responsibility. You can give to this morning's offering by placing cash or a check into the basket or by one of the options on your screen. Please make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept the offering.
Now is the time for centering, followed by shared silence. And of course, by shared silence, we mean the absence of grown-ups talking to one another so that we can listen more closely to the sounds of life. We will do our best at silence, and if it helps, and even if it doesn't, if you want to get comfortable on the fuzzy rug or even the normal rug, lying down on your back, imagining you're looking up at the stars, you can go ahead and do that, whether you're a grown-up or a child. And if not, maybe let your breathing slow down, your eyes fall closed, your breath slow, and imagine you're looking up at the night sky. Here you are, the only you, on a planet of 8 billion others and counting. Thank God we're recording it. And here you are, floating around our little star, 93 million miles away. You are quite small. And here she swirls in graceful spirals with the other suns in our galaxy, all 300 billion of them, more than the number of ping pong balls it would take to fill 10 football stadiums. You are so very teeny tiny. And beyond our Milky Way, a distance so far it takes light, the very fastest thing, 100,000 years to cross it. Another galaxy. In fact, another 200 or 300 billion of them. You are absolutely minute. As many galaxies as the stars in R1, and each of them full of their own stars. In all, maybe 10,000 stars for every grain of sand on Earth. Too many to number, too far to observe. You are microscopic, aren't you? And yet, here you are, and here inside of you, the only you that is, lives a whole universe. You are made of atoms, each so petite it takes 100 million of them to cross the diameter of just one hair on your head. Here you are, and the galaxy's worth of particles that live in your little finger, too. You are quite large, actually. And each atom made of even smaller stuff, protons and neutrons and electrons and quarks so small as to be immeasurable. Too many in your little body to write as a number, more than there are stars in the sky. You are pretty vast, it turns out. And in the observable universe, our best guess, and we are only guessing, the number of atoms is 10-ish with 82 zeros after it. And that, my enormous friend, is only the matter in a cosmos that is 95% not matter. And you are on the scale of planets and stars. You, the only you that is, are somehow minuscule and enormous all at once. You are a speck, and you contain multitudes. You, beloved, are a wonder. Amen. So I don't know if you've heard, but there's going to be a solar eclipse tomorrow. It's apparently kind of a big deal. The last solar eclipse, total solar eclipse that was visible here was 99 years ago. And the next one won't be for another 120 years. So truly, no one is exaggerating when we say this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Historically, around the world, people have told all sorts of stories about what is happening when the sky goes dark during an eclipse. There is a Hindu story of a god who was beheaded, but being immortal, his head continued to live on, floating through the heavens. And occasionally, in anger, over the beheading, I assume, he'd swallow the sun. Of course, without a body, it would then just drift out the bottom of his neck a few moments later and shine on. There are quite a few of these types of stories. Some mythical being swallowing up the sun, a dragon or a wolf or a god or even a mischievous squirrel in some places in North America. Some cultures would shout or bang drums or make as much noise as they could during the eclipse to scare off the sun swallower. And it always worked. The sun came back. The Inca in South America interpreted solar eclipses as the wrath of the sun god Inti, withholding his love from the earth, and would offer worship and sacrifices to appease him. Lots of people around the world actually saw eclipses as signs of the sun's anger. And their appeasements, their praises always worked. The sun came back every time. In Togo, they told a story of a mother goddess becoming so fed up with her whole family that she flew up into the sky to live on the moon. And honestly, kind of relatable, right? Eventually, the father god missed her and went to the sky to ride the sun to her and apologize. She forgave him and embraced him, hiding him from the view of her children below. And the naughty human children apologized at once for all their wrongs at the disappearance of the sun to the gods, and then they also apologized to one another just for good measure. And it always worked, every time. Evidence-based spiritual practice. And we understand what's happening during an eclipse these days, right? Does anybody know what happens? Yeah, Isabel? The moon covers the sun, right? The moon's shadow is what's making it dark, because it goes in between us, the earth, and the sun. And even though we know all that about planetary movements now, we still look up and wonder, with our special glasses on, at the cosmos when something rare and spectacular happens. We let our wonder press pause in us for a moment to consider all we do not know. For as long as humans have been a species, we have been struck by wonder when we look out at the dark universe. We have been compelled to tell stories, to make meaning out of what we see there. And sometimes we're right about what we observe and the wisdom we interpret in it. Most times, even when it works, well, every time so far, actually, we have more to learn. And that's the beauty of wonder. Being sure, being right, isn't part of it. Good science and good faith do the same thing. They orient us in wonder toward what we do not know. They ask us to turn away from certainty and toward the vast open dark. Benedictine monk David Steindl-Rast writes that wonder, awe, is the beginning of prayer. And if it's done right, it's the whole of it. To be in a state of awe, if we don't try to intellectualize it into a state of knowing, is to be awake to the deep well of gratitude for existing at all in a magnificent universe. If we can hold that sense of wonder, that beautiful uncertainty, we have the opportunity for real spiritual transformation. Sometimes, in my time in Unitarian Universalism, I haven't always practiced such good faith. Some Sundays, not my best Sundays, I come to this sanctuary of wonder, looking for answers. I kindle the flames of sureness in what I do know instead of curiosity about what is unknown or unknowable. And I have to admit, a quest for certainty has never been anything but a stumbling point for my spirituality. Sometimes, not on my best days, I think sometimes all of us, not on our best days, we come to church looking for certainty, maybe because our hearts are hurting, or our minds feel adrift, and we need something solid to hold on to. And far too many religious leaders are willing to offer it. But we lose the humanness and the humaneness of our faith when we refuse to engage religiously in the possibility that we might be wrong. Wonder reorients us. It sets us straight, or maybe considerably less straight. Now, we as UUs are excellent at making room for other people's uncertainty. We love that. We create communities that are open and flexible in their structure, but too often refuse to embody the same flexibility in our hearts and our minds. Often we come to church looking for a framework of community that is open and flexible enough to fit all of what we are already sure about. We get to be sure and unchallenged about our beliefs in unknowable things, like divinity, like the nature of life, like the goodness of humankind, the meaning of justice, as long as we don't challenge anybody else's sureness. But we are not here to build a place where we are always right. And look, I'm not up here this morning to hand out any kind of harsh judgment on that impulse. It can feel like lightness and hope to come into a community that promises we can feel right all the time, as long as we let everyone around us hold on to whatever we think they're wrong about. But I haven't come across a relationship in my life that is better served by being right than it is by being curious about what I do not know. Not even with myself. What we truly need from church, I think, is a framework of community that can hold not our certainty, but our wonder. What we need is a spiritual life that orients us in wonder toward all of what we do not understand. A community where we are invited to let go of our individual certainty about the boundless mystery of this world so that we might be transformed by it together. Hear me out on a little journey through some facts in this sermon on uncertainty. You can hold these facts lightly. They just came from the internet. If we recruited 80 million people, easy enough, right? 80 million tireless souls to stare into our most powerful telescopes and to each count a star a second. So 80 million stars counted every second. How long do we think it would take to count every star we can see? How long do you think it would take? Real answers. 1,000 years? It's a long time. Infinity? Yeah, Oren's doing some quick math in his head. He's gonna figure this out. This is a good point, Elliot. Maybe uncountable.
Think about the Earth has to rotate an entire year for you to see all the stars.
So it's gotta be at least 1 year. Peter thinks maybe 1,000. Elliot's pointing out there are more stars being made, and also stars dying. And people dying, right? Yeah, and that is gonna come into this because by astrophysicists' best guess, and I'm gonna trust their math on this, it would take 28 million years. 28 million years, counting 80 million stars a second, to number them all. So, I tell you this because maybe approaching the universe from the proper scale means knowing we don't know everything. Maybe all that we know amounts to very little after all. Maybe almost nothing. The scope of the cosmos we inhabit is unfathomably large. The scope of all we do not understand is unfathomably large. So maybe something other than certainty ought to be the framework for our spiritual life. Maybe ours is a universe that requires not sureness, but wonder for any truth to emerge for us. So I want to invite you into a little ritual this morning. I'd like to ask you to come forward when you feel ready and to extinguish one of the flames on the table in the front in honor of your own certainty, in honor of what you are in the dark about, what you are committed to not being right on. And you may choose to whisper the name of what you feel lives in that great mystery, what you feel uncertain about, or you may choose to hold it in silence. Perhaps it is too immense or too intricate to name. And as you unlight the flame, commit to giving yourself the gift of darkness, if only for 3.5 minutes. the warm embrace of wonder at all we do not know in a universe as vast as ours. So please come forward now as you feel called.
Galileo's head was on the block. The crime was looking up the truth. And as the bombshells of my daily fears flowed, I tried to trace them to my youth. And then I had to bring up reincarnation over a couple of beers the other night. And now I'm serving time for mistakes made by another lifetime. How long till my soul gets it right? Can any human being ever reach that kind of light? I call on the resting soul of Galileo, king of night vision, king of insight. And then I think about my dear emotion, for which I never could explain. Some other fool across the ocean years ago must have crashed his little airplane. How long till my soul gets it right? Can any human being ever reach that kind of light? I call on the resting soul of Galileo, king of night vision, king of insight. I'm not making a joke, you know me. I take everything so seriously. If we wait for the time till our souls get it right, then at least I know there'll be no nuclear annihilation in my lifetime. I'm still not right. I offer thanks to those before me. That's all I've got to say. 'Cause maybe you squandered big bucks in your lifetime. Now I have to pay. But then again, feels like some kind of inspiration to let the grass slide off the hook. Or she'll say, look what I had to overcome from my last life. I think I'll write a book. How long till my soul gets it right? Can any human being ever reach that kind of light? Except for Galileo, God rest his soul, king of night vision, king of insight. How long till my soul gets it right? How long till my soul gets it right? How long?
Let's close with a benediction from Diane Ackerman. Wonder is the heaviest element on the periodic table. Even a fleck of it stops time. Would you rise in body or in spirit and sing our closing hymn together? It's number 1064 in the teal hymnal, Blue Boat Home. Free bird.
Standing on these mountains and plains, far away
Please join me in our words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.